Yep.
All right, well, we got our presenter for the night, which if you guys know anything about walleye fishing in North Dakota, he doesn't need much of an introduction. The guy's a hammer on doubles. Obviously now spending his winters down south, which sounds like way more fun than ice fishing. So I'm sure we'll get to hear a little bit about that. It sounded like you wanted to do a lot of Q&A tonight, if you could.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Perfect.
What time do they kick us out of here?
That's a good question. We've never gone that long.
All right.
I'll hold them off at the door.
I already see some questions. Guys are drooling already. So.
All right, perfect. Yeah, if you guys fire your questions away, Mr. Johnnie Candle.
All right. Well, it's good to be back. Good to be back. Haven't been to FM Walleyes. I think it was the 50th anniversary, 40th gala that I emceed was the last time I was here. And it kind of ended in a little bit of a haze with a pie from Perkins that no one thought I would go get at 1:30 in the morning. I don't know if anybody was here that got to eat the peanut butter pie with me that night or not, but I was told we had a hell of a time. So it was it must have been a good night. So we had a lot of fun. The guys called and asked me to come back, and when they started rambling on about all the things they wanted me to talk about, I'm like, whoa, 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 it's only an hour and some minute meeting, right? So slow roll. But I went old school tonight. I think I've got 10 whole slides up here, and not a whole lot of visuals to look at. But what we're going to talk about tonight is a little bit on Devil's Lake, and then the hot topic right now, Forward Facing Sonar. I actually begged them not to make me talk about Forward Facing Sonar, but I said, what the heck, we'll talk about Forward Facing Sonar. And then questions and answers at the end, and I have up there anything goes. So who knows where that's going to get to. And I intentionally put Devil's Lake first because I have a very good feeling that the forward-facing sonar, when it spills into questions and answers, who knows where we're going to take off on a tangent. And it's kind of neat that Kyle mentioned MN Fish when part of my forward-facing sonar is where does it go next? Because it's going to involve game and fish agencies and DNRs and all that stuff. A lot of fun topics to talk about. And what's really cool is I'm not even sure where I stand on the whole thing, let alone how I can direct a North Dakota Game and Fish on which direction they should go. So maybe tonight we'll formulate some of our own conclusions before we're done. So let's talk about Devil's Lake first. 2024 open water season was very, very interesting, to say the least. I am not going to say that Devil's Lake isn't still a rock star of a fishery, because it is. But it fished so different last year than I have ever seen. And I've been guiding there since the year 2000, so 24 years under my belt. And the first 15 days of open water fishing, I was coming home ready to hang the rods and reels in the corner and say, you can have it, because I don't like thinking this hard. I'm not going to say that we didn't have success, but to duplicate it 2 or 3 days in a row in the same spot on the same baits, virtually impossible last year. And I've got some theories for why that happened. Last year was unique in several ways. The first way was kind of unique that we had no runoff, right? And we're staring at that again right now, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we had no snow on the ground. The lake thawed out very, very slowly. If you guys remember, right? It was can't ice fish, can't ice fish, can't ice fish. And I'm like, oh, I'll have the boat in the water in 5 days. And a month and a half later, you still couldn't ice fish, and I couldn't launch my boat, right? We had that in-between really crappy ice for a long, long time last year. When the ice finally did leave, spring happened so slowly. I mean, painfully slowly, right? Again, we got glimmers of early spring 2 or 3 times, and then right back in the 30s or the low 40s. And the lake warmed really, really slow. The combination of no runoff and that gradual rising water temperature, I believe, was the reason for all our frustrations all summer long. And I'll tell you why. When we get runoff in Devil's Lake, it comes into the lake in very few places, right? We all know that. You got the Mauvais Coulee, you've got 6 Mile Bay, you've got the Jerusalem Coulee way to the east, and that's about it, where the majority of the water runs into Devil's Lake. When we have a high amount of runoff, a lot of fish will swim to the current, and they end up in groups, right? You get a group of fish in Pelican Lake, you get a group of fish in 6 Mile Bay, you get a pretty good-sized group of fish in East Devil's Lake. Those groups of fish kind of move together, right? So you can follow the fish from Pelican Lake down through the Mauvais Coulee, out into the Minnewacan Flats, over the Golden Highway, and by the middle of summer, they're all out in the main bay, right? I think many of us have followed that pattern for years and years and years. The 6 Mile Bay fish kind of do the same thing, right? They start way up in Channel A, they come down from Dry Lake, they come down through 6 Mile, you catch them at the bridge for a couple days, then 10 days later, they're out in the main lake, then you're out at the towers, catching them on Don Denning's favorite tower, number 6, and you're whacking them on jigging Raps. Next thing you know, it's August, September, you're pulling lead core and whacking them on the main lake, right? Those patterns we get used to, and those fish are in groups. And when you catch one, you catch 31. Well, last year, no runoff. Those groups never happened. The other thing that we're used to happening on Devil's Lake is early in the spring, we're very well known for finding water away from the main lake, away from the main parts of the lake. We're going over flooded roads, way up north in Pelican Lake. We're going over sandbars to get into Holly Bay or the little no-name bay or Howard's Bay or New Mill Bay, right? Anybody that fishes up there is very, very familiar with your first fishing trip of the spring. How high do I have to trim my motor to get back here where the water's going to be warmer, right? Last year, that water warmed up so slow that I never, and I don't use the word never very often in a fishing seminar, I never found a bay warmer than the main lake last year. Not one day in the spring. I would leave the main lake and go all the way back into New Mill Bay, and it'd be the exact same temperature in New Mill Bay as it was at Budweiser Point, right? Or I'd go all the way into the back of Howard's Bay to look for warm water, and it would be 1 degree warmer than it was on the Golden Highway. Again, no reason for the walleye to go back there. Because let's face it, folks, there's nothing in those back bays that a walleye truly wants to be on. The reason they go there in the spring is because it's usually 6 or 7 or 8 degrees warmer in all those shallow bays than it is in the main lake. So they go back there because that's where all the life goes. The bugs are hatching, the minnows are in there. They're only there for water temperature, right? Yeah, some of those bays might have a rock pile here or there or a flooded road, but let's face it, there's a lot more walleye type structure in the main lake where a walleye would be comfortable than there is in any of those little back bays. And when that water temperature in the back bay was exactly the same as the main lake, guess where the walleye stayed? They stayed on the rock piles in the main lake. They stayed on the weed edges in the main lake. There was no reason to swim into those bays because it was a bunch of black, muddy bottom with no structure that a walleye wanted to be on. And quite honestly, there wasn't any more bait back there than there was in the main lake. Once I figured that out, I spent a lot more time around Doc Hagen's, Jerome's Bar, Budweiser Bar, rock piles in 6 Mile Bay, right? I didn't have to risk my lower unit and my $2,000 Mercury propeller going over sandbars and flooded roads and railroad tracks. Honest to God, my best spot last spring in the month of May was Budweiser Point. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Budweiser Point or not, but it's right out in the middle of the main bay, right? There's no shallow water really close by. It's really close to deep water. But if there was wind blowing on those rocks, I caught more fish there than I ever caught in New Mill, Howard's, any of the bays that we're used to fishing. So it was a very challenging season, and the challenges continued beyond spring because those fish never grouped up. You never had that group of fish in Howard's farm that left Howard's Farm the end of June, and you could troll the weed edge outside of Howard's Farm. And then they slowly move from Howard's Farm to Patience Point or Haley's Hump or wherever they go, right? You didn't have that group of fish that Men in Boats has made a living catching in New Mill Bay for the last how many years. Those fish weren't in there, which meant there wasn't a group of 3,000 fish that swam out of New Mill Bay and went around the corner to Fort Totten, right? You didn't have that mass exodus from 6 Mile Bay that comes down the bay and stops at the Zeebach Pass, right? We didn't have a large concentration of fish anywhere in the lake. And that made it very, very frustrating when you're used to going to a rock pile, hitting spot lock, throwing 4 bobbers out, and 6 hours later driving back to the boat ramp. Because that's what Devil's Lake has made us all to believe it is. And that just didn't happen last year. So it was very, very frustrating. 3 fish here, 6 fish there, 10 fish there, right? Or I'd see the Brewers trolling some of their favorite spots, and the 4th day I'd go by them and they're like, I don't know where they went, right? How many times did that happen, guys, right? I saw you last summer. You'd knock the snot out of them 2 or 3 days a row on a spot where they should be, and you start telling yourself, here we go, the rest of the summer is going to be easy, and you go back there the next day and there's not a fish to be found, right? Not what we're familiar with or used to on Devil's Lake. Fishing was still good, it just wasn't easy good, right? So this winter, for a guy that doesn't ice fish, was very, very promising for next spring because there were very little fish caught. That's really not what the Chamber of Commerce wants to hear me brag about, right? They don't want me going, oh yeah, ice fishing sucked. But ice fishing was tough. Ice fishing was really, really tough. I can't give you firsthand experience because I was wearing Bermuda shorts and t-shirts down south. But I keep in touch with a lot of my buddies on Devil's Lake. And again, same kind of thing, whether it was perch, walleye, pike, it didn't matter. They would get on them for short windows, right? I'd talk to a buddy that said, we finally got a limit of perch today. And I'd call him 3 days later and say, how's it going? Well, our best day since I talked to you last time was 7. I'm like, really? You went from a limit of perch to 7? And you couldn't find them again? Nope, couldn't find them again. And these are guide services with 6, 8, 10, 12 guys out there fishing, right? I don't know how many of you folks went to Devil's Lake this winter and fished. Again, was it horrible fishing? No, I can't call it horrible fishing, but it was not what we're used to from Devil's Lake. And again, since I don't have any skin in the ice fishing game, I'm not real upset about that because there's a lot of fish left to catch this spring, right? When ice fishing is down, just think of how many more thousands of fish didn't go home somewhere else. They're still in Devil's Lake. So that means knocking on the door here in what feels like should be a couple weeks, we should have some good fishing. But I said feels like it should be a couple weeks. Kind of reflecting back to 2024, I just drove from Devil's Lake to Fargo today and didn't see water in a ditch till I got to Hillsboro. None. I mean, none. Runoff, forget it. Unless God decides to tell Noah to build another ark, we're not going to get much water in Devil's Lake this spring. We're going to need some major, major, major weather, which I don't think any of us really want to deal with. But there's 0 snow on the ground in Devil's Lake right now. None at all. So runoff isn't going to happen. If we don't get some big spring rains, we're not going to get that big influx of water this year, which I think we would all agree helps position those fish. We don't know what the temperature is going to do this spring. Hopefully it warms up quick enough that you get that temperature differentiation and it puts those fish back in those shallow bays. But how do we know, right? We don't know. Is it La Nina this year? Is it El Nino this year? Is it the one in the middle? I don't know. Weatherman flips a coin and says, yeah, tomorrow 70 and sunny, and he gets paid anyways. So how do we know what's going to happen weather-wise? We can't really predict. But I think the fishing's going to be as good as we've ever had. Game and Fish is still saying that there's more than enough fish in the lake to keep everyone happy. The creel surveys came out from last year, and I can't remember how many % of anglers said that they had good or excellent fishing when they were asked, how would you rate your day today? People are still enjoying the lake. They're still catching a lot of fish. The size structure of the fish in the lake is still pretty good, I think. A lot of 15, 16, 17-inch fish. We would all like to see more 9 and 10 pounders, right? Everybody likes to go catch big giant fish. I don't know if Devil's Lake is ever going to be that trophy fish destination, but that fish came from last summer. It was a 29.5-incher. There's plenty of them out there. As a fishing guide, I don't chase the big fish around all that much. I know that, and we're going to talk about it later on, the guys that are scoping, right, the live scope kids in the Chamber of Commerce tournament put on a pretty dang good show for what they averaged, 6.5 pounds of fish or something last year for their 5 to win the Devil's Lake Chamber tournament. So those quality fish are there if you want to go look for them. And overall, I'm going to say that open water fishing season for 2025 is going to be as good or better than anything we've had before. Again, how can I predict where I'm going to start? I don't know. Part of me really wants to see a great big giant snowstorm that melts in 2 days because I don't really want to shovel it. But I would not be too upset to see it pile up and melt and run off into the lake. There aren't many people on the water. I live right on the lake shore, right on Creel Bay. And in the last 3 days, I've seen 2 people ice fishing on Creel Bay. That's it. So, yeah, the weather's been a little cooler, a little windy today, but no one's out there right now. So, again, the less pressure in the next month, there's that many more fish when the ice does go off, and we should be in good shape when it happens. So, anybody have any questions about Devil's Lake, what to expect, what not to expect? Yes, sir. How's that affecting the spawn? Well, they'll find somewhere to lay their eggs. It's kind of interesting when you talk to Game and Fish. We all know about the obvious runs in the Mauvais Coulee and 6 Mile Bay. There's a huge percentage of walleye in Devil's Lake that spawn in Mission Bay, right? And if you think about it, there's always current in Mission Bay. If you're not familiar with Mission Bay, that's the bay between the 2 bridges by the casino, right? There's always current there from the wind, right? That water's never sitting still. So I think that group of fish is going to have successful spawning no matter what. There's a lot of current under the bridges, regardless of runoff. It's just not the same type of current. So as long as enough fish get to the same spot at the same time when spawning happens, I think we'll be all right. I saw the results of the young of the year from last year, right? So they spawn in May, and in September they count how many. And it was right at the long-term average, they call it. So it wasn't a banner year like we had 2008, 2009, but it wasn't a year where Game and Fish is going, oh my goodness, we're used to having 30 fish in a net and we only had 3, right? So long-term average last year was quote unquote normal for spawn, and we had no runoff. So the fish find a way. Mother Nature is really good at that, finding a way to keep the species alive. So I think we'll be all right. Yes, sir. Well, we had a lot of rain last year, and I believe some of those are fuller than they were 2 or 3 years ago. Are they overflowing? Probably not. I mean, they're going to have to fill up a little bit before that water comes into Devil's Lake. It's not like we're bursting at the seams, but they're not dry. And a couple years ago they were, right? We had a couple years with a lot of moisture and still very little runoff because it all got held up north. But I think we're pretty full up there. The lake ended at the same level it started at last year, which is pretty rare. Usually we drop a foot or 2 over the course of the year. So even though we didn't have that big influx early, we had enough water, if you can all remember. Once it started raining, it didn't quit. I keep track of the water levels for my monthly seminars, and in July, the lake was still coming up. Granted, it was coming up slowly, inch a month, but it was still coming up in July. So that tells me there's a lot of water in the system right now. Anybody else with any questions? Good, we can talk about that. What's that? I didn't look today. I don't really care. It's ice level. Whatever level the ice is at, that's what it's at right now. All right, fun stuff. Forward facing sonar. Couple disclaimers before we get into this. I am a Humminbird guy, but on purpose tonight, I did not wear anything that says Humminbird, right? I am not here tonight to tell you that Humminbird MegaLive 2.0 is better than Garmin, or Lowrance is better than Humminbird, or Humminbird is better than this guy, or man, did we screw up with MegaLive 1 and it could have been better. That's not what I'm here to talk about tonight at all. If anybody has Humminbird specific questions when we get to the end tonight, I'll be glad to answer them the best I can. I'm just here to talk about what forward-facing sonar is, how people are using it, how I use it, and where I can see this technology going in the future. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what is it doing off the water to fishing, right? Which could be a fun topic. I'm going out on a limb. I usually don't talk about controversial stuff. I'm not so sure that forward-facing sonar is controversial, but we could probably make it that way before we leave, right? Why not? We'll have a little fun with it. So, what is forward-facing sonar? And I'm a little disappointed that Humminbird calls it live sonar. You've heard a lot of companies call it live sonar, and all sonar is live sonar, right? It's all live. It's all real time. The front edge, right? If you have 2D sonar going, that first ping before it moves is live, right? When you're looking at side imaging and it goes from the top down, that first pixel on the top is live. So we've always had live sonar. So let's take the whole word live out of the equation. It's real time, but so is every sonar. The difference is forward-facing sonar doesn't have history, right? It's not showing history on your screen like we're used to. It's showing the whole water column in a transducer cone in real time with no history, okay? The beam that comes out of forward-facing sonar is no different than the beam that comes out of your down imaging or your side imaging. They're the same frequency, they're the same cone angles, it's all the same. It's just displayed differently on your sonar screen, right? Is it cool? I think so. It's pretty neat. What's awesome about it, and again, forward-facing sonar isn't the right word either, it's directional. And it's user-determined which direction it points, okay? I know more people that use it facing backwards than use it facing forwards, but no one calls it backward-facing sonar. Maybe they should, right? I know on my boat, it's always facing forward because I haven't mounted on my trolling motor and I don't have a choice. If I put it in spot lock, it shoots that way. I don't have it on a pole. But if you're using it on a pole on the side of your boat, you can face it sideways, backwards, upside down, whichever way you want to face it, right? But it is directional, okay? So now we have, for the first time ever, a sonar beam pointed where we want it pointed, right? Just think about that for a second. Just that alone. Wow. Who would have thought that, right? What, First Pan Optics came out 8 years ago now or something like that. And I remember sitting in rooms listening to people say, oh, it's just a fad. And I'm like, how can this be a fad? For the last 30-some years, 40 years, 50 years of my fishing life, the only chance I had to use sonar was pointed wherever the boat made it point. How is letting me point it at what I want to see going away ever, right? That's like taking a flashlight that's permanently mounted on a stick and you can only look here in the dark and now letting me point it all around the room. Why would you ever point it on a stick again, right? If I have that flexibility of looking at what I want to look at, it's not going away. But it is very, very basic. It's kind of funny to listen to people talk about how technologically advanced it is, and it really isn't. It's really not. It's still a sound wave that leaves a transducer, and it goes through the water, and it hits something, and it bounces back, and it draws a picture. It's no different than a flasher that you use for ice fishing. It just draws the picture in a manner that now we can see a fish swim, or we can see a fish turn, or we can see it chase a lure. Okay, so that is what forward-facing sonar is. I wish there was a definition. I actually looked online to try to find a definition, and no one has actually made a Webster dictionary definition yet for forward sonar. Somebody will eventually. So how do we use it? Well, this is kind of fun. When it first came out, the big thing was we're going to use this to locate fish and then present our lures right where the fish are. And my first introduction to Panoptics way back in the day, it was brought out as an ice fishing tool primarily, right? You can drill a hole, we can shine this Panoptics thing all around under the ice, and we can see a school of fish 37 feet over there, and my buddy can pace off 37 feet, drill a hole, and we can drop our jigs right down on that school of crappie and catch them, right? And instead of drilling 30 holes on a point like we used to, now we can drill one, find the fish, drill a second hole. It's going to make things quicker, easier. We'll get to the catching quicker. And it was that for a really, really long time, right? Didn't hear a whole lot about forward-facing sonar in open water fishing right away. Then it started to catch on, right? The guys down south, especially the southeast, the bass fellas, started pointing this thing under docks, right, up against logs, going, I don't need to cast to that log, there's no fish there. I don't need to cast under that dock, there's no fish there. So they weren't really using it right away to cast at targets, but they were using it to look places that it was really hard to look with traditional sonar. Can you look under boat docks with side imaging? Absolutely you can. I've driven past a lot of boat docks and looked underneath with side imaging. But if you don't pay attention to what dock it was that you saw the fish, the docks are real close together, you're going to spin around and was it this dock or that dock, right? Man, with the live, they're pulling up there and they're shining right under the dock, and if they don't see anything, they kept moving, right? So that's how it started. Then anglers figured out, wow, if we make the perfect cast, which this angler's not very good at, I don't know how many of you can hit that beam 50, 60 feet out. I'm not very good at it. But if I can make the perfect cast, I can drop a lure in the sonar beam and watch it go by a fish and see that fish react to my presentation, much like we're all used to doing with our flashers and liquid crystal ice fishing, right? People up north have been watching fish react to presentations for years and years and years, ice fishing, but we've never been able to do it so much in open water. Now we could, okay? So we've got a lot of people now scoping for fish, right? You come to Devil's Lake, you come to Pelican Lake over here, you go to Lake Oahe, pick wherever you want to go, and you pull up to your spot and you drop the trolling motor in instantly, which is something very new to me. I'm not used to that. I'm used to pulling up to a spot, driving around and around and around, looking at 2D sonar and side imaging, finding the fish I want to fish for. But now you pull up to a spot, we're dropping our trolling motors in, and we're literally scanning with this directional sonar to see if there's fish there. If there are fish there, many, many anglers are now setting up off of those fish, and they're casting their favorite lure right at that fish, watching it react or not react in some cases, and then making decisions about how can I catch said fish, right? So I think we're all pretty familiar with that use. Tom Wynn from the Fargo-Moorhead area, if I'm not mistaken, one of the best, if not the best in the business at it. Actually, I think he spoke to your group, did he not, this past winter? And that's why I really didn't want to come in here and start talking about how to use it, because you've already learned from the best guy in the business how to do it. There are some other ways folks are using forward sonar, though. I don't think they get talked about quite as much. I've seen a lot of individuals turning their forward sonar around and pointing it at their lures while they're trolling, right? Whether you're pulling a bottom bouncer and a spinner or trolling a crankbait if it's close enough to the boat, or they're actually weighting their crankbaits so they can keep them close enough to the boat so they can see them on forward sonar. And what they're doing there is trying to see fish come up to their presentation and decide if they want to eat it or not, right? So that's a huge clue, right? If I just have my regular 2D sonar or side imaging and I'm trolling a bottom bouncer and spinner down a flooded road in Devil's Lake, I know that those fish went under my boat on 2D sonar. I have no idea if they even looked at my spinner or not, right? Well, if I have my forward sonar, which is now backward facing sonar, if I have that pointed right at my bottom bouncer and spinner, it's amazing how many fish swim up to your spinner and follow it and don't eat it. You probably don't want to know how many fish on the Golden Highway swim up to your spinner and follow it for a while and don't eat it, because it gets frustrating. But it allows us to make adjustments. Now we know the fish are looking at our spinner, but they're not eating it. What do I change? Well, maybe you twitch it a little bit or pull it faster or slow it down. They don't hit it, all right? Maybe I need a different size, maybe a different style of blade. Maybe instead of a night crawler, I need a leech or a minnow, right? Maybe I need a different color. These are all things now that you probably wouldn't have changed before. You would have just said, oh, they're not biting here, let's go to another spot, right? So now we have another way to collect more data about what's happening under the water to help us make adjustments to catch more fish. Another way that I like to use forward sonar, and this is how I use it probably 95% of the time, I am actually bird dogging walleye. I feel like a great big giant German short hair pointer when I'm out on Devil's Lake now, right? I'm on my trolling motor up front, got my Mega Live pointed ahead of me, and I am literally meandering around on a flooded road, off the edge of the flooded road, on a big shallow flat, down a weed edge, and when I see a pod of fish, I'm on point, right? I even put my leg up a little bit like this, right? I go on point. And I am stuck to that depth. I'm telling you right now, if Don Denning was in front of me, I'd drive right over him because I'm not looking anywhere other than that screen when I see that pod of fish. And I literally am chasing it like a golden retriever chases pheasants through CRP, right? I pointed at that pod of fish and I'm driving at them, and all of a sudden the pod of fish disappears. Did they go left? Nope. Did they go right? I don't think so. Did they go left? There they are. So now I turn left and I'm going at them this way. And then I lose them again. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? Oh, they turned right. So now I'm going over here. Oh, I lost them again. Oh, there they are straight ahead of me, and I drive over them. And I'll watch them go from my live sonar screen to my 2D sonar screen, which is right on my trolling motor. And then I'll tell my clients, get ready. And they'll count to about 3, and someone inevitably catches one almost every time. And then they're like, how did you know? Fish whisperer. That's what I tell them. I'm just connected with nature, right? I've got gills. I can communicate with these fish. Kind of like Aquaman. You know who Aquaman is? Kind of like Aquaman that way. But it is actually a lot of fun to do that. Again, I have come dangerously close to T-boning other boats because I get so stuck on that screen, and I'm not sitting still, right? I'm not sitting still casting where you can look at the screen and not hurt anybody. I'm out there going 1.2 miles an hour down a flooded road in Devil's Lake looking at a screen instead of where I should be looking. But man, it's really cool to chase them down, and that's what you're doing, chasing them down. Spinners, Lindy rigs, jig and wraps, anything I'm fishing vertically, it's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. And again, you drive over 2 or 3 pods of fish and nothing bites, well, now you know I need to start making some adjustments. Need to go faster, slower, bigger, smaller, different colors, whatever it might be, right? So that's the ways that I see it being used today. So now the fun part. Where is this going to go, right? And this is what I really wanted to talk about more. And again, I get it. I'm putting myself out on a limb there. People are going to ask my opinion, and that's exactly why I did not wear any sponsored logos tonight, because this is my opinion. It's not Humminbird's opinion. It's not Garmin's opinion. It's not anyone else's opinion but Johnnie Candle. And you can take that for what it's worth. You can walk out of here tonight and say, that guy's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You're probably not far off. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I drove for 3.5 days from Florida to home with not much to think about. So I think about stuff a lot. Where's the technology going to go? Well, it's interesting to see where it's come so far. The technology that is next level from what we have already exists. I cannot remember the name of the company, but there is a foreign company that makes offshore ocean-going sonar that can see a blue marlin a mile in front of a boat. The technology is there, right? The military has been able to do this for decades and see a lot further than a mile in front of a warship, right? It's trickling down, and it all has to do with affordability, right? There's none of us in this room that can afford a sonar to see a blue marlin a mile in front of our boat. But if you were fishing the Maui Billfish Classic with all your rich buddies and first place was $10 million, you would probably have the money to see that billfish a mile ahead of your boat, right? So it's all relative. But that technology is there, and it's going to trickle down into what we mount on our bass and walleye boats. There will be a day when, right now, everybody brags about 100 feet, right? That seems to be the number that I hear a lot, right? Humminbird got knocked before because you could only see 60 feet. Garmin claims 120 or 130 on their, is it a 34? Is that their better, I don't even know which number. I think it's a 34. Then they have the XR version now, right? The extra range. I don't know what Lowrance claims for their distance, but I think you're going to see that steadily increase, right? It's going to go from 100 feet to 150 feet, then maybe 200 feet. Heck, how long will it be and we'll be able to see a full football field ahead of your boat? That changes the game a lot, right? I've tried using it trolling crankbaits at 2 miles an hour, and 100 feet in front of you is barely enough to see something and turn at that speed and still get your lures over it. But if you give me 200 feet or a football field, holy cow, I can turn and put my planer board right over that school of Lake Erie walleyes and catch 10 or 12 of those fish in one pass, right? So I think we're going to see that technology continue to get that improved range. I don't know how much more clarity we can get. I mean, come on, folks. Side imaging, down imaging, 360, Mega Live, all of them, you can tell which end of the fish is the head and which end of the fish is the tail, right? How much more crisp and clear do you need it to be, right? Do you need to know that it's missing one dorsal fin, right? I mean, if you can tell which end is which, that's pretty dang clear. So I don't know if we're going to see that much more improved clarity in the picture, but I think range is what we're going to see. The other part of this that I can't help but believe that the technology is going to move to is the panoramic views or the landscape views. I think every manufacturer calls it something different, but instead of looking at that thin slice, you're laying your transducer flat, right? And I think Humminbird's is like 160 degrees. Garmin claims 140, but you're all familiar with that view, right? Where you're looking at kind of a half a circle in front of your boat. Every time I bring it up to the people that I work with at Johnson Outdoors and ask about live 360, the subject gets changed instantly, which is usually a good indicator that we don't want to take a chance of saying something to you we shouldn't say. Right? But that's a very logical progression in my mind. If we could put a transducer in the water and see a circle 100 feet around your boat and watch fish swim like they're in an aquarium, the first company that does that, it's game over. What other technology could you ask for as an angler other than knowing every fish in a 100-foot circle of your boat without having to move anything, right? I've got 360 on my Humminbird now, but it takes about 4 seconds for the circle to go around. So I can miss something, right? A lot of stuff can happen underwater in 4 seconds. But if you took 3 or 4 of those transducers and stitched them together and had a live image 100 foot around your boat, and you could literally just sit there and say, there's one at 12 o'clock swimming to the right, and pitch your jig in front of it, oh boy, right? That, to me, that's got to be where it's heading, I think. No matter where it's heading, it brings the discussion to what do we do about where it's heading. Some people might say, who cares where it goes? Technology's technology, right? Where would I be in life today without my cell phone? I'm recording this seminar in a camera that's this big right now, right? Back when I was a kid, if you wanted to put something on video, the camera was about this big, right? I'm not anti-technology. I kind of like technology. Technology's made my life really, really good. I remember growing up in a house without air conditioning, because who wants that technology in your window? Now we all have a whole house air conditioner built right in. So don't tell me technology is a bad thing, right? We just brought astronauts back from 8 months in space. I don't think any of us are complaining that that technology is bad. That's going to help us somewhere down the road. So I am not anti-technology, but some people seem to be when it comes to forward-facing sonar. And with this added technology, what comes with that, right? What's going to happen? Well, I think we're already seeing it. Maybe not so much for us in the north, definitely maybe not North Dakota, but the pan fishing in Minnesota. I've seen a lot of hubbub on the internet. I've talked to a lot of folks that feel like these panfish that were never molested before because people couldn't find them and stay on them are now getting fished for much harder, and people are harvesting more, so the populations are getting less, the bigger fish are dwindling, things are going away. I can kind of see that, right? Walleye populations, right? Are they going to get decimated? You know, you take a lake like Lake of the Woods, where those 30-inch fish, a guy went out and fished for 3 days and caught 2 or 3 of them, and now you have a Minnesota tournament trail, and every boat's catching 8 or 10 30-inchers in 3 days, right? Are we going to start damaging trophy fish populations? I can find all the scenarios and say it all comes down to one thing, and it's not stopping the technology, it's educating anglers and keeping your fingers crossed that everybody gives a shit. And I hate to be that blunt about it, but that's pretty much what it comes down to. There will always be a group of outdoorsmen, quote unquote outdoorsmen, that don't care. There will always be that group. There will always be the deer hunter that drives down the road and doesn't care about a posted sign and doesn't care that he's already got 2 in the back of his truck. If he sees a third one that he can kill, he's going to kill it. That hunter's always going to be there. There's always going to be the angler that comes to Devil's Lake and goes out in the morning and catches his 5, and then goes and wakes the kids up and puts them in the boat and catches their 5 plus his 5 again, and then drops the kids off and picks the wife up after supper and catches her 5 and his 5 again, right? Those people are always going to be there. We can't eliminate that. That's just human nature. Hopefully, though, what we can create because of this technology is awareness. Awareness that populations can be changed, that they can be fished out. I heard it for years and years and years. You'll never fish out this lake, or you'll never fish out this lake, or Lake Sakakawea is so big it'll never get fished out. But yet, you go there and the fish are gone. I can name every lake in the country that I've seen when they're really, really good and when they're really, really bad. And one that's not all that far from here is Mille Lacs Lake, Minnesota, right? We've seen that thing be so full of fish that you can walk across them, and I've gone there many, many times in my life where you couldn't catch one. Now, granted, that's not all angler related, but the point is, as human beings, we can alter what's happening in the wild. We can. We can over-harvest, we can under-harvest, and we have a responsibility. And I think forward-facing sonar, in a roundabout way, is kind of making us as anglers look in a mirror and say, what exactly is our responsibility? And right now, no one has an answer. No one has an answer, right? The easy out is blame it on technology. We're going to blame it on technology. Well, if it wasn't for forward sonar, we'd still have all these walleyes to go catch in Lake of the Woods, right? That's that dang forward sonar. Well, forward sonar didn't open your cooler lid and put the fish in there, right? Forward sonar didn't say, I got to make one more cast before I go in to see if I can catch another one of these fish, right? That's not the technology. So the burden on changing anglers' attitudes falls on who? Does it fall on the angler? Well, I think partially it does. In a perfect world, I would love that groups like this could all sit in here and say, all right, guys, the walleye limit in Devil's Lake, North Dakota is 5, but now that we've got forward-facing sonar and it's easier to catch all those 24 inchers instead of the 16 inchers, our club's going to say, put your hand on this book and raise your hand. We're all going to vow that we're never keeping a fish over 20 inches again. That would be great. That would be awesome. I would love that. It's unrealistic. It's unrealistic, right? So we turn to game and fish DNRs, right? You'd like to think as technology comes along, they might be able to look to the future a little bit and say, hey, look, if there's going to be more panfish harvested in Minnesota because of forward sonar, perhaps we should adjust the limits. Now, is that going to help? There's a school of thought that says, sure, that'll help, because if you can only keep 10 instead of 20, or 5 instead of 10, there's less harvested. In my mind, not so sure it's really going to help, because it goes right back to that angler that we know we can't get rid of. The angler that's already fishing responsibly is going to realize, man, my freezer's full already. Do I really need to keep 20 more crappies this weekend when I go fishing? Changing the limit from 10 to 5, if you're already a conscientious angler, isn't going to change what's in your freezer, if you see where I'm going, right? So I wish I had the answer. I really wanted to stand up here and say, guys, I figured this forward-facing sonar thing out. Here's what we need to do. Let's all go tell our representatives and congressmen, change this and change that. I'm afraid there is no answer, because we're trying to hit a moving target. We don't know where technology is going next, right? We have no idea. We have no idea. So I kind of just wanted to come here tonight, give us all something to think about. I'm hoping that that discussion kind of rolls into questions and answers. I think from the people I know in the room, we can keep it civilized. I think we can. I think we can. I don't see too many. Don, don't start. That's the only wild card right back there in the back row. But I think we can keep it civilized. But I would love to hear input from others. I don't want to see the technology restricted. I follow, because I make my living in the fishing industry, I follow legislation a lot. There were several states that had proposed legislation this last year to ban the technology. Wisconsin was one of them, right? I don't want that. I don't think it's right to tell anybody to not research new technology, right? Because you don't know what the next technology is going to bring. And it's really not fair to have all these companies that their job is to go out and develop new stuff, and then after they develop it, some government entity says, oh, you can't use that, right? They tried it with the green box, and then they tried it with liquid crystal, and then they tried it with underwater cameras, right? You guys all remember when underwater cameras came out. I think Minnesota was, oh no, can't use those. They'll catch every fish in the lake. Well, guess what? We haven't. We haven't. And now it's forward sonar, and who knows what it's going to be next. So I really don't want to see, technology stopped. Now, here's some other things to think about when it comes to forward-facing sonar. And this has nothing to do with fish biology, has nothing to do with how many fish are in a lake, populations, none of that. I've seen a few posts on the internet by some pretty high-powered pro anglers, some industry leaders. I spent some time with Al Lindner in a boat this winter in Florida. He came down and fished with me for a day, and he and I talked about it. And the bigger concern right now for fishing industry insiders is what is all the new technology doing to the fishing business, to the fishing industry. Meaning, example, if I was the DeShano family in Michigan that makes offshore planer boards for my livelihood, I'd be shitting bricks right now. Because no one's buying planer boards right now. Nobody. What for? Can't use forward sonar for that. Right? I can tell you what shad wrap numbers have done, what flicker shad numbers have done, what reef runner numbers have done, what bottom bouncer and spinner sales have done in the last 2 years, and they haven't gone up because those aren't techniques that you use with the new technology. This is the first time that I've ever seen in my fishing career, which spans 36 years, a technology change anglers' buying habits as drastically as this one has, right? I go to iCast, and if I can't get there, I follow it. The last 2 years, I have not seen a new crankbait introduced anywhere. They take an old one, slap some lipstick on it, right? Put some new paint jobs on it, maybe change the treble hooks and call it a XD or something like that. But everything new has been focused at forward-facing sonar. And if you really want to narrow it down, everything new is just a new version of a jig and a minnow. Right? That's all it is. That's all it is. Well, I got news for you, folks. That great big store right down 13th, where we are not on 13th anymore, but right down the street that we all love to shop at, can't stay alive selling rubber minnows and lead head jigs. They can't. There's not enough dollars and cents if all everybody switches to fishing with is a tungsten jig and a 3.5-inch piece of rubber. And that's what the fishing industry has become in 3 years. It's bad. It's really bad. Even fishing line, right? The last 4 or 5 new fishing lines that I've seen now are all based on forward-facing sonar. Right? This line holds more air in it so you can see it on forward sonar. This line sinks so it's a direct line to your jig and you can see it better on forward sonar. Right? Jellies to smear on lures that have metal in them so your lure will reflect forward sonar. But again, the guy dragging planer boards around, right? Dragging lead core around, I get it. Everything in the fishing tackle game is cyclical, right? There's a lot of things I fished with 25, 30 years ago that I don't fish with today. But I have never seen anything get so narrowly focused because of a technology as I've seen in the last couple years. And that's kind of scary because I make my living in the fishing business, right? And if all my customers want to do is come to Devil's Lake and stand on the bow of my boat and cast that individual fish, I don't know how much longer I'll be a fishing guide because that's kind of hard to do, right? You make them draw numbers out of a hat in the morning and say, okay, you get to throw at the first fish, you get to throw at the second fish, you get to throw at the third fish. I only got so much room on the deck of my boat. I can't put 4 guys up there and say there's one and then duck when they all try to cast at the same fish. Right? I mean, I'll have more earrings than Miley Cyrus would by the time the summer's over, right? I'll have jewelry hanging from everywhere. So I am a little bit concerned about how the fishing industry has gone all in on forward sonar, right? That concerns me a little bit because you still can catch a lot of fish on a bottom bouncer and a spinner. You still can catch a lot of fish trolling a crankbait on lead core or casting a crankbait. I don't want to throw the slip bobber thing in there because a lot of times slip bobbers are being used with forward sonar in the walleye world. But I never, ever, ever thought in my lifetime, I grew up on Lake Erie, right? My father was one of the pioneers of trolling planer boards and fishing for suspended walleye in the 70s and 80s on Lake Erie. Never in my life did I think John Hoyer would go out there and live scope his way to a tournament win on Lake Erie. That's the trolling capital of the world, right? Lake Erie was made for dragging a crankbait around, right? Schools of fish miles long. And a guy went out there in 6-foot waves. I watched it all on TV, right? 6-foot waves, and found a way to aim that sonar and pick out the right 5 fish and smoke the field in a lake that no one would have ever thought you could win casting a jig and a minnow on forward-facing sonar. Like I said, if I owned offshore tackle right now, I'd be in panic mode, because he's got to find a way to convince the world to use his planer boards and point forward sonar at them somehow, because that's what everybody wants to do right now. Now, will it last forever? I don't think so, right? I don't think so. When side imaging first came out, the whole world quit looking at 2D sonar and just stared at side imaging, and now we're using them both on the same screen and compare apples to oranges and this and that, right? I think the same thing will happen with forward sonar. 1 or 2 more tournament wins where guys didn't use it, which happened this spring already. I can't remember what body of water they were on, but the one young gentleman racked up 38 pounds of bass in one of the tournaments and didn't use his forward sonar at all. And everybody's like, holy cow, maybe you don't need it, right? A couple more of those and people are going to start saying, yeah, it's an additional tool, but it's not the end all. But until that happens, it is pretty amazing how the fishing business has focused everything on forward sonar, right? Anybody in the room read an article lately on anything but forward-facing sonar, right? It seems like it's dominating everything. I even use it saltwater fishing, right? I mean, I'm out there in the great big Gulf of whatever country you want to call it nowadays. I don't even know. Every day it seems to change, but I shine that thing around and it's amazing what I see out there. It's an incredible, incredible tool for letting us observe what's going on under the water, right? We're learning a lot about fish behaviors, fish locations. It's amazing to see how far fish actually suspend off the bottom, and then you still catch them with your lure on the bottom. One thing that struck me as the most surprising is, for years and years and years when I did seminars like this, we talk about catching a fish, and you'd always say if you're going to miss, you want to miss above the fish, right? How many times have we all heard that? You've probably heard me say that, right? Fish feed up. Their eyes are on top of their head. So if you're going to miss above that fish. And then I go out on forward-facing sonar and throw a jig out there, and I watch a walleye that's 6 feet off the bottom follow that jig right to the bottom and eat it, right? So much for only feeding up, right? I mean, we blew that one bad. I mean, really bad. It's crazy how high fish are off the bottom, and I drag a bottom bouncer and spinner under them and get bit, right? And I know they're 4 feet off the bottom because I can see them on there now where I couldn't before, and my bottom bouncer's only this high off the bottom. They got to swim down to eat it. So much for only swim up, right? So we're learning a lot about fish behavior, which is great. But again, there is some responsibility that comes with forward-facing sonar, and hopefully, and I think we'll be okay. I haven't hit the panic button like a lot of people have. I think we'll be all right. I think anglers as a whole, outdoorsmen as a whole, sportsmen as a whole are pretty responsible. I think so. I mean, I look around this room, and other than the 2 or 3 guys I know that might keep one they should. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't even have to say who it was. I heard them laughing in the back already. But no, I think for the most part, when I look around the room at a place like this, I know 99.9% of the people are, if that fish is supposed to be under 20, if it tickles 20, they throw it back. If it's supposed to be 15, it's 15 and a quarter. I know I play it that way. I know a lot of guys in the room play it that way. And I'm not too worried about the 6 or 7 bad eggs that are at every boat ramp. Again, they're breaking the law no matter what you make the law anyways. So nothing we can do about that. But overall, I'm going to say Johnnie Candle's perspective on forward-facing sonar, we'll wrap it up and get into some questions and answers, is any new technology that helps us catch fish is a good thing. And anything that makes us think as much about a topic as Forward Facing Sonar has made us think is a good thing, because when you get enough minds thinking about something, the right outcome will eventually happen. That's where I'm at on it, right? Would I like to see the fishing industry get balanced out again pretty soon? Yeah, I would, but I'm not worried about Forward Sonar. It's here to stay. The more we learn about it, the more responsible we're going to become, and the more fish we're going to catch. And bottom line, that's what all of us are in this room for, is to learn how to catch a few more fish, right? That's why we go fishing. You can sit on your lawn chair and look at a sunset, so don't tell me you go fishing just because you love to be outside. You go fishing to catch a fish, and Forward Sonar is going to help us catch a lot more fish. So that's what I got for Forward Sonar. Before we get, I didn't change the thing fast enough. Before we get into the questions and answers, because I always forget to do this, maybe. Couple of things. I got to promote myself a little bit because I got to stay alive. Many of you have enjoyed my seminars over the years, over the months. I know a lot of you tune in to my monthly live seminars about Devil's Lake, right? How many of you do that? Quite a few. We are doing those again this year, so for those of you that don't know about those, the first Wednesday of every month, starting in May through October, I'll do a live Devil's Lake Here's What's Happening seminar on the Devil's Lake Tourism Facebook page or on my business Facebook page, so you can tune in and watch. Those are automatically stored on Facebook, so if you miss them, you can watch them. And the folks at the Chamber of Commerce put them on their Facebook page. Usually takes them about 2 days to get them up, or I mean YouTube, I'm sorry. They get them up on their YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch them if you missed them. So make sure you tune into those. A couple walleye schools that I teach. The Lake Vermilion one in Minnesota is going on year 16 next year. I've been doing that for a long time. It's a lot of fun. September 18th through the 21st. If you've never been to Lake Vermilion, it's a really, really cool place. It's the closest I've been to Canada without being in Canada. It's absolutely gorgeous up there. Granite, boulders, rock outcroppings, all that kind of stuff. Fishing can be challenging, but when you get it right, you can catch a lot of nice fish there. And then I'm coming back with another school at Woodland Resort this year. The details have not been 100% ironed out yet, but the dates are booked, the 25th through the 28th of September. I have a meeting next week with the folks at Woodland to figure out pricing and all that kind of stuff. But what these schools are, folks, is you come to the school with your boat and your equipment and learn how to use your stuff to catch fish. There's a lot of other fishing schools out there. I think Lund has their ultimate fishing camp, they call it. A couple other schools out there where you show up and you jump in someone else's boat and you use somebody else's equipment, someone else's depth finder and trolling motor to try to learn how to catch a fish. And then you go home and get in your boat and pick up your rod and reel and your trolling motor, and the wind drifts different and the boat doesn't handle the same. And you're like, man, he made it look so easy. And I was just sitting here in the back catching fish, but now I got to do it on my own and I can't do it. I didn't think that's the best way to teach someone to catch a fish. So we have the people bring their own boats. I have myself and a handful of other teachers. I try to keep the ratio about one teacher for every 6 or 7 students. And then the teachers actually get in your boat with you and go out and teach the techniques that you want to learn, right? So you're doing it with your rods, your reels, your boat, your equipment. We spend a lot of time on marine electronics. We spend a lot of time, obviously, on Forward Sonar. I'll have people there that can run every brand of sonar unit you can name. So we'll have an expert that can jump in your boat, help you push buttons and get pictures dialed in. We've even been known to get the drill out and move transducers and remount stuff and whatever we got to do, right? I've rewired trolling motor batteries. I've gone to my garage and grabbed a new transducer and help a guy out every now and again, right? We'll do what we have to do. But they're a lot of fun, a lot of good fellowship, a lot of fun times. Every now and again, after hours when the campfire's going, there's some pretty good stories shared, that kind of thing. So lots of work, lots of learning, but a lot of fun too. So if you're interested, you can reach out to either one of the resorts or you can contact me. There is my contact information. JohnnieCandle.com is the website. I paid some marketing firm a lot of money to figure that out, what my web address should be. JohnnieCandle.com. My phone number is up there. If you can't see it, come get it from me afterwards. I have no problem sharing my phone number. Actually, there's several guys in the room that have it already, so you could probably get it from them. Where do I guide? Well, Devil's Lake, North Dakota, obviously. That's what we talked about. I've been there, like I said, this will be year 25, and it's a lot of fun. My spring and midsummer is full. If you want to come fish with me, August, September is about your only option right now. Unless the ice goes off early in May, we might be able to sneak an early spring trip in. But primarily chase the walleye there. I do get asked about perch. I have no idea where a perch lives in Devil's Lake in the summertime, and if I did, I wouldn't tell anybody. It's, I don't know, they're tricky to catch in the summer, and I can try, but I have had very limited success. But walleye, pike, white bass keeps us busy. And then down in the Gulf, in the Florida Panhandle, a small little town of Carabel, Florida, I make my winter home down there from November through the end of February, probably middle of March next year. We chase everything from redfish and speckled trout to grouper and snapper, amberjack, sheep's head, hogfish, catch a few sharks here and there. This last winter, I kept track. In the 4 months I was down there, 51 different species of fish we put in my boat this year. That's pretty cool. If I had an aquarium, it would look really, really neat, because some of those fish are really cool and some of them are really scary and some of them are both. It's pretty bad when you catch something and have to tell your customers don't touch it till I look at what it is, because I get the phone out and dial up the app and can you touch this? And I had a couple I'm like, I'm not, even though the app said it was safe, I still wouldn't touch them. Look up Brazilian batfish if you get bored. That's the weirdest fish I've ever seen in my life. It's got 3 tails, 2 sets of legs. It actually can crawl across dry land, kind of like a dogfish, but you catch it in 60 feet of water. So why does it need to crawl on dry land? I don't understand, but it's a fun place to fish too. So there we go. Questions. Let's do questions. Yes, sir. So for me, it's the ease of putting it in and out of the water is why I have it on my trolling motor, point blank. There's a lot of days when I'm driving around on my trolling motor wishing I could turn it and point it the other way. When I'm on spot lock, it's really frustrating because I'm spot locked to cast to something back there and can't point my forward sonar at it. But it's all about the ease of putting it in and out. I use the Minn Kota Ultrex motor, which is the scissor lift with the cable steering. And I do not want to give up that trolling motor because I love the way it steers and handles when I'm jig fishing or casting a shoreline. And I have my 360 and my live all mounted on the trolling motor. So I put the trolling motor in and all my sonar in at the same time, instead of putting a trolling motor in and then coming to the back of the boat, putting a pole down and all that. I think in a perfect world, you would have it both places if you could. There's no doubt about it, when you're sniping fish, trying to cast to individual fish, it's so much easier to move that transducer with your foot and cast and reel than it is to point your transducer, hope your boat doesn't drift off, right? Because if your boat drifts and your transducer's on a pole, you're no longer looking at the fish, you're looking over here, right? It's so much easier when you are fishing that way to use your foot. But yet, when you're sitting still and you want to pan the area, I wish it was on a pole. So, I don't know. Someday, I might have 2. I don't know. But that's why. So, fish reacting to sonar, whether it's forward facing or down or anywhere in between, I'm going to say that yes, they know it's there, saying that sonar is keeping them from biting, I can't prove nor confirm. That would be a great one for Mythbusters, right? There's a lot of days that I have fish in my sonar cone, whether it's forward sonar or right below my boat, that you drop a jig down and catch them one after the other. Ice fishing, right? They're right underneath your Vexilar or whatever you're using all day long. And you knock the snot out of them some days. They don't care. The next day, they swim in and they don't eat. Can you prove that that's the sonar that made them not eat? Or is it something else making them not eat? So how on earth you could ever prove that the noise from the sonar is shutting those fish off? I don't know how you could scientifically do it. There's so many variables that go into catching a fish that I don't know you could ever pinpoint sonar as being one of the ones stopping that fish from biting. That being said, for every person that thinks it doesn't matter, you can find one that thinks it does. I mean, I'm already hearing it in the bass world. I turn mine off now after I find the fish. I use it to find the fish and I shut it off because they're getting pinged by all these boats day after day after day after day, and now they're on to us. Well, guess what, folks? Those fish have been pinged by sonar since the green box came out in 1950 whatever, right? They're not new to sound waves in the water, right? Just like us, right? When I go to a restaurant and it's noisy, do I still eat my dinner? Most of the time. I mean, every now and again, I'll go to a restaurant and it's so loud and obnoxious, I'll look at my wife and say, you know what, let's just get out of here, and I'll eat half my food and leave. But do you know how loud and obnoxious it has to be to keep this from eating? Right? And I don't think fish are all that different. I really don't. If they want to eat, they don't care what's in their way. And we have all seen that, right? I've done hours of seminars on fishing for the hungry fish, right? When you find the right fish to catch, you could ping them with anything and they're not going away because they're hungry. They're in an area with food, they're on the prowl, they're ready to eat. Shine every sonar beam you want at them, you're still going to catch them, right? So that's the way I look at it. We've been shining sonar at fish for decades and we still catch them. About the bank thing, I don't know. I think in walleye fishing, there aren't that many guys that fish the bank anyways. Right? Right. Right. But in the bass world, you are starting to see a little bit of a turn from the guys, right? At first, everybody left the bank. Well, I don't know if it's because those fish are getting harder to catch out there, or if the guys are starting to say, wait a second, there's a group of fish out here with 100 anglers on them, and a group of fish over here with 6 anglers on them. Where's my odds better? Because when I was a tournament fisherman, part of what cost me in my tournament career is I refused to fish in the crowds. I hated fishing in a group of 50 boats. I would much rather go fish where there's only 2 or 3 boats competing for fish and take my chances than fish in a crowd. I think you're starting to see a lot of guys move back to the bank, not so much because the fish out here got harder to catch, it's just because there's less competition on the bank, right? Now you've got 12 boat docks to yourself instead of 20 years ago, every boat dock had a boat fishing it, right? So I think that's why you're starting to see more guys go back to the bank again. I saw some other hands. Go ahead. Right. Right. Yeah. Like I said, I've spent a big part of my career giving seminars about when you find the right fish, you catch them on a spark plug, right? And that's what you look for. That's what I look for, especially as a fishing guide, right? I have 3 or 4 clients in my boat. I don't know what their skill level is at all. The easier it is to catch fish, the better for them. So I don't sit on neutral or negative fish as a fishing guide. I fish for 10 minutes. If they don't bite, I go try to find those fish that are gorging themselves, because then it doesn't matter if I have a white spinner or a green spinner. It doesn't matter if I have a paddle tail or a straight tail. It doesn't matter if I have a crankbait or a jig. All I got to do is get it in front of them, and my clients are going to catch one, right? And I firmly believe if you look hard enough, you can find those fish almost every day somewhere, right? Now, when you can't find them and you have those neutral fish, yes, color matters, size matters, shape matters, sonar matters, light matters, how much noise you made with your boat, right? Again, no different than us. When I'm in a neutral mode, sitting on the couch, I'm really not hungry. If my wife brings the right food in the living room, I'm eating it, right? But if she brings fried pickles in and I'm really looking for a cheesecake, I'm not going to eat the fried pickles. But when I'm really, really hungry and the door of the refrigerator opens and something falls on the floor, I pounce on it, right? I don't even care what it is. And fish are the same way, right? When they're hungry, they don't care. When they're not hungry, all that stuff matters. That's why I don't like fishing for the fish that aren't hungry. Try to find the ones that are hungry. Yes, sir. So if I am going to convince myself, I've found a school of fish and I really want to try to catch them, right? I start fishing fast first and slow down as I progress. When I say fast, crankbaits, casting jigs, jigging wraps, something real aggressive, I always start fast and go slow, not start slow and go fast. If I can get them to eat something moving quickly, there's a very good chance you can fire that school up and get them all excited. The last thing I want to do as a fishing guide is sit there with a Lindy rig and back troll through a bunch of fish and hope one of them bites. And then have my clients go, I think that was a bite. I think that was a bite. I don't want that, right? I want something moving. You feel the bites. Fish hit it harder. If anything, I'll change my size or profile before I get into color, right? I could give a rip about what color it is. If it's white, it's going to catch a fish, right? If you get in my boat anytime, you'll see 8 out of 10 rods have something white on them. And the other 2 is usually chartreuse, right? So I'm not a big color guy, but the size, the profile, right? Last year on Devil's Lake, quite often, I saw days when they wouldn't hit the paddle tail. Same size split tail minnow, they gobble it up, right? So that's a pretty subtle change in my mind. You'd like to think quarter ounce jig, 3-inch tail, 3-inch tail, but one had a paddle and one didn't. Just a simple change like that sometimes can fire them up, right? And last year, again, I found myself doing that more and more because our fishing wasn't quite as good. And I fished a lot more straight-tailed lures than I did paddle tails last year for the first time in a long time. So it's nice to have multiple people in your boat. Never have everyone start with the same, right? That's like cheating. When you got 3 people in your boat, that's 3 tries, right? So have everybody start with maybe a different shape tail or a different size tail, different action, and see which one gets bit first. But like I said, I try to err on the fast side, not the slow side.
Deep fishing. I've seen some of this, but what's your knowledge or thought on the breasting?
So let's see. I can give you the North Dakota Game and Fish answer, which is just don't fish for them, which, let's face it, it's not going to happen. When the fish are in 30 feet of water and I want to catch dinner, I'm going to go out to 30 feet of water and fish for them. I'm not going to say that getting the bends isn't for real, because it is. We've all seen it, right? What I have experienced personally in my fishing lifetime. If you get that fish, unhook them, and get them back in the water instantly, they have a very, very good chance to survive without doing anything to them, right? I've caught plenty of 13-inch walleyes in Devil's Lake, North Dakota in 30 feet of water. You pick them out of the water, you unhook them, you throw them back, and I can watch them on my sonar swim right to the bottom. There's nothing wrong with that fish, right? You catch a 27-incher out of 33 feet of water, stare at it in the net for 30 seconds, pick it up, oh, hold on, I can't find my phone, what's your passcode, I can't get your camera open, wait a second, I'll get it, now hold the fish, wait, there's a shadow, tilt your hat back, okay, click, click, click. You might as well throw that fish in your live well. Doesn't matter what you do to it, it's not going to make it. I see it a lot more in the ocean than I do in fresh water because I'm catching fish in 50, 60, 70 feet of water. Using a fizzing needle will deflate the swim bladder and help, but it doesn't give that fish its energy back, if that makes sense, right? One of the guys in Florida told me the rule that they like to teach is when you pull a fish over the side of the boat, hold your breath. And if you're still holding that fish, when you have to let your breath out, you held it too long. Doesn't matter, decompress, not decompress, because it's been without oxygen too long that it doesn't have the strength to survive. They use a lot of release tools, descending devices, they call them, in the ocean, which I really think if you're going to get serious about it in freshwater, someone's going to have to make a smaller version for freshwater fish. They work really slick. I mean, really slick. They have one that, based on water pressure, you tell it what depth you want that fish to be released. And when that device hits a depth, it lets go of the fish. What that does for the fish is it doesn't have to swim down, right? You're getting it down there. So it doesn't have to come up with that burst of energy to get back down to 30, 40, 50 feet. Again, from the guys I'm talking to in the ocean, they're saying most of the damage is coming from that fish swimming from the surface back down, not the actual decompression part. It's that they don't have the energy to get back down there. So if we could get them down there and then let them go, they would have a better chance to survive. I have fizzed fish a lot. I've done it in tournaments for years. I'm sure I've killed as many as I've saved, right? You puncture the wrong part of the fish, right? And you almost hate to say it out loud, but I was fishing a tournament and the rule was the fish had to be upright. And quite honestly, I'll say it out loud. I didn't care if that fish lived or not. I was in a tournament trying to make a living and it was upright. So I made it through the line and they weighed my fish and all was good. But man, fizzing fish is tricky. Start sticking needles in there and puncture the wrong organ or push it too far, and you could do more damage than good. That's why I think the descending devices, you can make your own. I've seen a lot of them made. They take a curtain, like a window curtain rod that's got the hook that's upside down, and they hang a weight on it, put it in the lower lip of the fish, and just drop it down. And when they get to the bottom, just lift it out, right? Because it's not hooked in the fish, it's just in their mouth. And that gets that fish down. You know, you put 6, 7, 8 ounces of lead on there, and it drags that fish down to the bottom so it doesn't have to swim down to the bottom. I think things like that are more effective than poking holes in the fish. But yeah, it's something that's for real. It's seemed to have risen to the top of the list with a lot of game and fish departments the last couple years. And I wonder if some of it's not forward sonar, right? If we're not finding those crappies in deeper water than we used to, or finding walleyes suspended in deeper water than we're used to. Because 10 years ago, you didn't really hear about it much. Now it seems like the last couple summers and even ice fishing, you're hearing more and more and more about catching fish in deeper water. Anyone else?
Quick question in Devil's Lake. Last year I witnessed the water clarity a little bit better. Is that lack of runoff, or do we have zebra?
I don't know if I'd call it better. Cleaner. I'll give you cleaner.
Any zebra mussel issues?
As far as any powers that be are saying, there's no zebra mussels there. I would agree with you that it was really clean last year. Lack of runoff definitely made it cleaner. There's no doubt about it. We didn't have water coming through miles of farm fields. But I'm starting to wonder, and I've had conversation with many, many other fishing guides and anglers on Devil's Lake. Part of me wants to say, how can there not be a zebra mussel in there, right? How can there not be, right? I know how many times I wash my boat when I came from tournament after tournament after tournament, but I can't say that for every other boat that came from Green Bay to Lake Erie, or from Green Bay to Devil's Lake, or Lake Erie to Devil's Lake, or Saginaw Bay to Devil's Lake, or Pelican Lake in Minnesota to Devil's Lake a day apart. I don't see how there can't be one in there somewhere. I haven't seen one attached to anything, but water clarity was a concern last year, and it makes fishing tricky too, right? You guys know that as well as anybody, because your lakes all around the Minnesota part here are all getting infested with zebra mussels, and as it happened, I watched all of you pulling your hair out going, why can't we catch these fish anymore? Well, all of a sudden they could see you, right? You fished for them for a lot of years where they couldn't see you, and now they can see you. So it definitely changes the fishing when the water's that clear. But let's keep our fingers crossed that they're not in Devil's Lake yet. Anyone else? Anything? You guys have been way too easy. No hard questions tonight.
I've been thinking about your numbers. Is there hard numbers to suggest that more fish have been harvested since the introduction of that particular technology?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Minnesota and North Dakota, places that we fish, I don't know if they keep track that well. I mean, I guess you could go back in time and say, right, Panoptics was introduced in this year, and then it got better in this year, and all three manufacturers had it this year, right? Because in the beginning, you could only get it one place. So is it even fair to say, right, Garmin introduced Forward Sonar in 2012 or whatever year it was? Well, it was just one company with one model, and no one really had it, right? I guess in my mind, you would have to pick a year where every major manufacturer was making it and try to determine, did the majority of the anglers even have it? And then say, did we see a bigger harvest from that point forward? I don't even know how you mathematically do that.
Even with that, you're drawing a correlation.
Right.
Correlation is not cause and effect.
Right.
What has happened to the number of anglers? Same.
Right.
I think general numbers say that anglers have increased, but that's clear.
Right.
You look at fishing, high school fishing leagues, and things.
Right.
Like
And I would almost,
I think the numbers are up.
I would almost say that one of the pluses to forward-facing sonar is it's got more youth involved. I would say that. It's got more kids involved.
The numbers are confounded. We
Right.
have 20% more anglers up.
Right. Then there better be 20% more fish. Right.
So the technology didn't do
Didn't do anything. Right.
it. They
It's
tried burning books back in grade high school. in
Right.
1980s and whatever it was.
Right.
It didn't change it.
right.
So I'm
Right.
concurring with your
Yeah. I think
your impact of technology.
yeah, I think there's, every time something new comes around, there's impact, right? I mean, we started fishing jigging wraps 15 years ago in open water season, and I sure felt like I caught a lot more fish till I went back and looked at my guide records and said, gee whiz, I caught the same amount of limits this year as I did last year. I just caught more of them on jigging wraps, right? I mean, if you're fishing for your limit and you get your limit and you quit keeping fish, who cares if you caught them with forward sonar, or if you caught them with backward sonar, if you caught them standing on your head? I don't care, right? You look at myself, I guide 100 and some days a year. Last year, I limited out every day but 3, right? The year before, I limited out every day but 2. Did forward-facing sonar make me limit out one more day? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My fishing results were the same with forward sonar, without forward sonar. I think most of us are going to say the same thing, because the people in this room are not the people that the internet's worried about, right? The people in this room are the ones that say, I caught 8 crappies, I know my limit's 10, but I don't need 10 because these 8 will feed my family and I'm going to quit. Those people are still catching 8. They caught 8 before, they catch 8 now. Did they catch 8 faster than they did without forward sonar? Maybe, but who cares? They still only kept 8. right? It's the bass tournaments that I'm hearing about dead fish because they think people are catching 50 fish a day instead of catching 7 or 8, right? And they're throwing fish back that might have came from deeper water and blah, 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 right? So those are some of the issues that I'm reading about. Again, not an expert on those. I've never been to Alabama and watched guys fish in a bass tournament. I don't know. And if that is happening, then maybe we do need to change some rules about, right? If you're in a bass tournament and yeah, you weigh your biggest 5, but maybe there should be something about how many you release or how you release them or what you do. I don't know. I mean, then you start with that whole playing God thing, right? Is it really, can we really alter the course by changing a rule or not changing a rule? And that's why other people get paid a lot of money to figure that out.
My concern is that they make a decision on subjective analysis.
Correct.
Not
Correct.
objective.
Absolutely.
They don't have the numbers.
Right. Which is,
Have an opinion.
right, which is very common in what we're talking about, right? There's too much emotion. There's too much blood, sweat, and tears that goes into hunting, fishing, right? People tend to not look at data. They look at what they think, right? Perception is reality. They don't necessarily write it all down, right? It's no different than me keeping track of what I catch in a tournament pre-fish versus what I think I caught in a tournament pre-fish, right? When I started writing it down, I realized I wasn't as good of an angler as I thought I was, right? Really? I only caught 10 today? God, it felt like we caught 15 or 20. No, we only got 10. That's all I wrote down, right? So you're absolutely right, though. If, like you said, if Forward Sonar has increased angler participation by 20%, but the catch rate's only gone up by 10, well, that's a minus 10 net gain, right, is kind of what you're thinking. So Forward Sonar really didn't have an impact, right? The impact it had was more people fishing. Right. Right, exactly. Yep. And I don't know if game and fish departments even have the desire to collect that data, to be honest with you.
I suspect you're probably right there. Brands aren't going to collect them.
No, they don't want them. No. Correct.
I haven't heard of that yet. If I buy your product, I can catch it.
Right, absolutely.
Doesn't help me, but
No, it will. It will.
I know I caught it. I keep it.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right. Well, that was easy enough. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Again, my contact information here, I'll back that up. Maybe I'll back it up. Won't back it up. I'll back it up so you can see it. If you're a Facebook fan, follow me on my professional angler page, if you would. It's Johnnie Candle Professional Angler. Do not go to my personal Johnnie Candle page and send me a friend request, because I have 17,000 of them that I don't respond to already. That's literally for family and high school buddies and stuff like that. So if you want to see what I'm up to, follow me on Johnnie Candle Professional Angler. Hit the like button, and you'll be bombarded with more fishing nonsense than you really ever wanted to see in your life. But I get a lot of clicks and likes. People must enjoy watching my escapades. But yeah, thanks again for having me, and I'll probably go have a cold one in the bar if anybody's interested in joining me afterwards. I'll probably mosey on that way. But thanks again for coming, and travel home safe. Yeah, thank you.
We'll probably take like 5 minutes or so. Still got some banquet tickets up there if you want, raffle tickets. Take a break, go grab a beer, run to the bathroom, whatever you got to do, and we'll get the raffle drawing stuff going here in a few minutes.
Woohoo, raffle drawing. Don't you win all the prizes.